Our Father and our God, we thank you and praise you so much for your goodness to us. We thank you for our day of worship yesterday and for getting to gather with the saints and enjoy your word. And we ask that you would continue to shape us by it, that by the preaching of your word, by the sacraments that we partook of, that you would help us to be more and more like Christ. And we ask that for this class as well, Lord, as we study ethics and what it means to conduct ourselves in a way that honors you and that serves others. We pray that this class would be used to shape us, to transform us more and more into the image and likeness of Jesus Christ, that as we wrestle with perhaps difficult questions and ethical considerations that we may face in pastoral ministry, we ask that you would equip us and give us wisdom and discernment in handling these difficult situations. Be with Mr. Elkin as he teaches, be with us, that we can focus for these long hours, and through all these things be glorified, we ask in Christ's name. Amen.
Yeah, thank you. As you're turning to, good morning, as you're turning to Luke 18, please. I'll say one or two things just before we begin. I chew gum the whole time. If not, Tuesday afternoon, my voice is gone. So I don't mind if you chew gum. Just so you know that is the why. Luke 18. The study Bible has a little introductory phrase at the beginning of the chapter. It says parables on prayer. Okay, so we are reading about parables on prayer, aren't we? And he spake a parable unto them to this end, that men ought always to pray and not to faint, saying, there was in a city a judge which feared not God, neither regarded man. And there was a widow in that city, and she came unto him, saying, avenge me of my adversary. And he would not for a while. But afterward he said within himself, though I fear not God, nor regard man, yet because this widow troubled me, I will avenge her, lest by her continual coming she weary me. And the Lord said, hear what the unjust judge saith. And shall not God avenge his own elect, which cry day and night unto him, though he bear long with them? I tell you that he will avenge them speedily. Nevertheless, when the Son of Man cometh, shall he fix faith on the earth? Find faith on the earth. And he spake this parable unto certain which trusted in themselves that they were righteous, and despised others. Two men went up into the temple to pray, the one a Pharisee and the other a publican. The Pharisee stood and prayed thus with himself, God, I thank thee that I am not as other men are, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even as this publican. I fast twice in the week. I give tithes of all that I possess. And the publican, standing afar off, would not lift up so much as his eyes unto heaven, but smote upon his breast, saying, God be merciful to me, a sinner. I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone that exalteth himself shall be abased, and he that humbleth himself shall be exalted. I use a little Bible study each time I have the privilege to do this class. And it is, by definition, the Pharisee and the publican. But we have the little descriptive at the beginning of the chapter, parables on prayer. Well, think of these four little P's. P number one, prayer, the problem, the parable, and the point. Bear with me just a little bit. It's a parable on prayer. Can anyone quote the Shorter Catechism on the definition of prayer? What is prayer?
The sons of Bani were much more.
Just joined.
Lost you.
I think he was just joining and maybe.
Oh, okay.
Mic on.
Okay, okay. As a footnote, I will tell you, I'm old. I've been to a lot of Presbyterian meetings. I worked with RUL for some 35 years. And the thing I did, I think most, was recruiting. That put me into a lot of Presbyterian meetings. I worked for 3 presbyteries, and I attended those 3 presbyteries at every possible opportunity. Memorize the first 35 questions of the Shorter Catechism. And if there's any conceivable way of your quoting the Catechism to a question put to you on the floor, quote the Catechism. Always quote the Catechism. Prayer is an offering up of our desires unto God for things agreeable to his will, in the name of Christ, with confession of our sins and thankful acknowledgement of his mercies. Prayer. Well, prayer is very important in Christian life. In Mark 14, Jesus went up to the mountain and prayed. Jesus found prayer to be important. In Mark 11, Jesus says that when we pray and ask, believe, and our prayer will be granted. At the beginning that we read in verse 1, Jesus teaches that we ought to pray at all times and not to faint. Okay. Acts 14, the disciples were praying and fasting. 1 Thessalonians 5, we're commanded to pray without ceasing. Depending on who you think wrote the book of Hebrews, either 4 or 5 times, Paul calls out for prayer, like in 1 Thessalonians 5. Brethren, pray for us. If Jesus prayed, if the apostles prayed, as the disciples prayed, as the Lord says, prayer is very important. Prayer should be a mark of your ministry. Let's close the book and we'll be done for the day. It is very, very important. I've got a little paragraph here that to me is one of the most interesting paragraphs in the English language. It came out of John Leith's book on the Westminster Assembly. John Leith, a professor at Union Seminary in Richmond for all those decades. I could tell you stories. I did a year there at one point. But John Leith, in his book, gives this rendition of one day in the life of the assembly. After Dr. Twist had begun with a brief prayer, Mr. Marshall prayed large 2 hours, most divinely confessing the sins of the members of the assembly in a wonderfully pathetic and prudent way. We have just enough time in the rest of the morning for me to pray for you, confessing all your sins. Let's pray. After Mr. Arrowsmith preached 1 hour, don't take it as a command, take it as an historical description. Then a psalm. There were psalm singers. Therefore, Mr. Vines prayed near 2 hours. Wait now. 1, 2, 3. Mr. Vines prayed near 2 hours, and Mr. Palmer preached 1 hour. And Mr. Seaman prayed near 2 hours, then a psalm. After, Mr. Henderson brought them to a short, sweet conference of the heart, confessing seen faults to be remedied. And Dr. Twist closed with a short prayer and blessing. You and I would say they accomplished nothing. They came great, some of them great distances with great stress getting there. Some stayed for much of the duration of the 5 years of the assembly, but they had to come and go. They were pastors. They had funerals, they had weddings, they had all kinds of things to do. They had families. What are they doing, wasting all of their time preaching and praying for all of those 6 hours of praying plus 2-3 hours of preaching? What were they thinking? Well, they produced pretty good product. Meaning the Westminster Confession of Faith, which I think is the strongest, best theological compendium on Scripture itself. The larger and the shorter catechisms and the directory of worship. They prayed. You ought always to pray and pray biblically. 2 men went up to the temple to pray. A man who was very important in my life was Dr. John Reed Miller. He was pastor at First Presbyterian Church in Jackson, Mississippi for some 17 years. I had the privilege of spending a good bit of time with him. I have quotes of Dr. Miller that thankfully I continue even at this age to carry around with me. He had one little quote that went like this: "Seasoned Christians always pray." Is that enough? It could be enough, couldn't it? It could be enough talking to students at Greenville Presbyterian Theological Seminary. We ought to be known as prayers. In 10 years, what do you want your congregation to be saying about you? Or what would you like on your tombstone when that day occurs? Seasoned Christians always pray. Jesus tells us here are parables about praying. Number one, prayer. Number two, the problem. Well, the Lord does something to me a little bit quizzical. He takes sort of a right turn in the midst of this second parable about prayer, and he talks about these 2 men. Lord, tell me about praying. Well, you're about to go into a theology of psychology. You're about to go into a description of what's right and what's wrong in the hearts of men. The 2 men go up to the temple to pray, the Pharisee and the tax collector or the publican. What is a Pharisee? Those who meticulously, I have this quote, those who meticulously tried to carry out the teaching of the law. Their special stress was on tithing and their refusal to eat with non-Pharisees. Who was the publican, or what was the publican? Quote, a tax collector or custom collector on behalf of the Romans. The system was very open to abuse, to extortion, to malpractice. They were generally hated and thought also to be ceremonially unclean because of their constant contact with Gentiles. Verse 11 tells us that this Pharisee even took a special place to stand up and start praying so everyone could see him pray. In unbounded presumption, he declared his righteousness. And in that presumption, he mainly thought of all others. Quote, proud men who exalt themselves are rivals with God. Proud men who exalt themselves are rivals with God. Supererogation. I'm teaching through the confession or whatever, stumbling across the word in my favorite chapter, number 16 on good works. Super irrigation. Well, that means you're watering your grass too much. Well, that means, oh, super irrigation. I don't know that I've ever heard of that otherwise. Well, they who in their obedience attain to the greatest height which is possible in this life, those men who preached and prayed, wrote, are so far from being able to supererogate and to do more than God requires, as that they fall short of much which in duty they are bound to do. Supererogating. There's a danger there, isn't there? There's a danger that we encounter because of who we are, because of who you are. This Pharisee says that he gives tithes, that he does all of these things as he looks down his nose at all these other people, and particularly, without a doubt, at the tax collector. One man said that the prayer of the tax collector was a compendium of all of theology. What did he mean? He meant that the little bitty short prayer was absolutely packed with the very best Bible theology because of his reference to God, theology, his view of sin, hamartology, his view of soteriology. He was a man who understood God himself and his needs, and he cried out. Ezra 9:6. Oh my God, I am ashamed and blush to lift up my face to thee, my God, for our iniquities are increased over our heads, and our trespass is grown up unto heaven. The one man was comparing himself to other people. The other man was standing before God, abased. It's a little bitty short prayer. And Jesus is teaching us things about praying. Well, the problem, the seeming problem is that Jesus is going to be telling me about prayer, but he's getting a little bit too close. Here you and I are sitting in a seminary that is the far right wing, most true, most on the planet Earth. Oh, I get to teach ethics at Greenville, Presbyterian Theological Seminary. You just don't know how good I am at this. Or, well, you know, I'm a ruling elder in the Presbyterian Church in America. We have 380,000 members in the whole denomination. You can't believe how good we are. Can you? Certainly, truth is absolutely important. Thy word have I hid in mine heart that I might not sin against thee. Sanctify them in the truth. Thy word is truth. That's not the question. The question is, who are you? I've got a pet player in this little play here. I'll tell you which one is my guy. Which one is your guy? My guy is the Pharisee. Dr. Pipe and I'm going to tell things on Dr. P during the week. I've only known him since we were high school seniors. Dr. P and I at Belhaven College, we showed how Christian we were because we carried our New Testament in our pocket. Who are we? What are you like? What are you? Are you like the Pharisee? Yes, I am. Are you like the publican, tax collector? Can I be? Prayer, the problem, and it's not really a problem, isn't it? But look at what Jesus does. He takes a right turn on me. Oh, okay, I'm gonna read about prayer. Oh, which guy am I? the parable, every man is more or less like the Pharisee. We're on a compendium, whether you believe it or not. We're on not a compendium. What am I trying to say? What's my word?
Spectrum.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. We're somewhere along that line, aren't we? Or I will tease you every now and then. I have to admit I'm a teaser and I have to be careful about it. But we're all somewhere on the spectrum, an Armenian withdrawal. And it's tough going through that withdrawal all the way from right now until the day the Lord takes you. We are somewhere on that spectrum. And I'm somewhere on the spectrum between the tax collector and the Pharisee. One man said that the Reformation was a triumph of the publican's humility over the Pharisaic self-righteousness. Oh, that's an interesting way to look at it, and I thought it was interesting. The solas of the Reformation teach us our place. That may be the big thing, huh? Well, humility. Humility belongs in heaven. High-mindedness belongs in hell. What do you think of yourself? Can I divulge? This is not, I'm off script right now. Okay, I have to be careful when I go off script. High school class reunion. Being the designated religious person. Doing the designated devotional. After which, the smartest girl in our class, who wandered off the reservation in some ways later on. But at that high school class reunion, I forget which one it was, 40, 50, 60, 70, whichever one it was. Afterwards, she declared to one of our classmates, who declared it back to me. You Presbyterians are always talking about sin. Praise the Lord. If we're always talking about sin, sin is any wanton conformity unto or transgression of the law of God. Sin is very important to us. Technically and actually, the little prayer of the publican, the tax collector, should be read, I am the sinner. You know what you and I do usually too, though? We usually say, oh, I'm a sinner, you're a sinner, we're all sinners. And I take myself right out of the crosshairs as a result of that. The Pharisee, oh, he's arrogant. Are we? Are you? Am I? What's the point? The point is, wherein lieth our confidence and wherein lieth our evaluation of ourselves. How self-righteous are we? Proverbs 12, the way of the fool is right in his own eyes. Proverbs 30, there's a kind who is pure in his own eyes, yet is not washed from his filthiness. We have to be very concerned about us. You have to be very concerned about you. Being right does not give one the freedom to be arrogant. I feel like I ought to stop there, but I'm going to end up with levitating a little bit. In teaching a Sunday school class all those years ago, I came out with something that I say I've said through the decades too often. pretty big class at First Pres, Jackson, Mississippi. Some of you know who David Strain is. Some of you know who Ligon Duncan is. I was on the committee that recommended Ligon Duncan. Dr. Miller previously mentioned at First Pres Jackson. But in Sunday school, I came out with, in the midst of teaching the confession, there are more Baptists in Mississippi than there are people. Then I moved it a little further. There are more Baptists in Mississippi than, of course, there are Presbyterians. But, you know, when we get to heaven, there are going to be more Baptists there than there are Presbyterians. But they're pretty soon be all Presbyterians. I got an anonymous note before the next Sunday. Very unhappy with me for putting down the Baptists. Well, I apologized. I meant it to be levity, and levity perhaps at the expense of others, yes. What do we like? Jesus is teaching on parables. Jesus said right at the end, the one went down to his house righteous and justified. It's a personal note that I usually tell at this point in this little study, and it is this. Of course, you didn't know my mother. Dr. Piper did. She stood yay tall to me, which means she wasn't a very big lady. She was known within the family, and a big family. Lots of cousins. A lot of cousins. She was known in the family, in the local church, and very little beyond that. She was not a notable person by any estimation. But she went to her home justified because of the righteousness of Jesus and not because of her place in life. Why do I do this Bible study at this juncture when I have the privilege of teaching this class? It is to raise the question, who in the world are you? Who in the world are you? I'm going to read one other page as a devotional. I had not planned to do it, but I'm going to read it, and I'm going to tell you more about this book tomorrow. Voices from the Past. Do you know the book? Do you have the book?
I had it and I put it in the washing machine on accident.
How did it come out?
Very clean,
Very clean.
but unreadable.
I have a Friday morning. Well, I tell you, I have a Friday morning group, a little group that we've been meeting for 20 years or so, and we've used this book for probably 4 years now. You can tell by all the color coding, and I just love this book. My wife and I love this book very much.
I have a question, sorry, on the passage, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Do you think that it's ever appropriate for us to thank the Lord for keeping us from certain sins, hopefully not in an arrogant way, but recognizing that only by the grace of God have we been saved from the ensnarement of life-dominating sins or something like that?
You hold that question for about 3 or 4 minutes.
Sure.
And then come right back at it with me. Would you do that? Sure. Okay, let me read this page. It's from yesterday. Wait, let me get my page. No, I'm wrong. Which page did I need to read today? Oh, wait, let's see. Well, I'll do it tomorrow. And I thought the page was very appropriate to answer that question. Father, our art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. The kingdom come, the will be done on earth as in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our debts, we forgive our debts. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. It's kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever. Amen. Yes. I understand how it could theoretically be argued, but I would attempt to assert that practically speaking, we are very dependent on God for just such as you query. I'll tell you now that my favorite verse and a half in the Bible, I would ask you at some point, probably tomorrow, what's your favorite verse? But I'll tell you my favorite verse and how I think it applies to your question. Philippians 2, 12b and 13. Work out your salvation with fear and trembling. If that were all we had, it would seem to imply that we accomplish our own redemption. But of course, what Paul is saying is live out your salvation. Work out your salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God is at work in you, causing you to will and to do his pleasure. Absolutely. His good pleasure. To will and to do. The synergy of Christian living. God is at work in me, causing me to will and to do of his good pleasure. Lord, would you make me willing to will the will of God as willingly? Can I willingly will the will of God willingly? As God's Spirit is at work in me. And again, my favorite chapter, and I'm going to refer to it several times. We'll read it at one point. Chapter 16, the confession of good works, paragraph 5. We have explained to us there that nothing that we do is in and of itself good from God's perspective, because even in the best of things that we seem to do, our best actions are tainted always with bad motives. Nothing we do, all we do is sin. Nothing we do is of itself righteous. We need God's Spirit at work in us, causing us to will and to do of his good pleasure at every moment, Yeah, I think so. Okay, any other things about the devotional? I'm going to start talking about the class in just a minute. But I always like to start with that, of raising the question, who do you think you are?
Where was that quote on the assembly from again?
The assembly quote
Yeah.
comes out of John Leith's book, Leith, John Leith, the Westminster Assembly. It's a good quote, isn't it? I've got it here in my notes, and I've got it another copy of it in my notes if you just want to photocopy it. I can hand you that page. You don't have to go rummaging trying to find it.
Picture of my phone.
Would you have your girl talk to my girl? Okay. What I'm going to do next is explain some things. I got to explain some things to you. Some are just very mundane things, rules of the road, as we enter a very rigorous week. I said to a couple of you guys before the rest of you showed up that I figured out a long time ago that there's one person in the class who has to stay awake the whole time. Okay. I am it. I will do my best to stay awake. Usually on about Wednesday afternoon, I'm bleary-eyed, as you are too. We're trying to stay as focused as possible. Let me ask you a question. Who's the boss here? Somebody speculate. Somebody guess. Who's the boss in this class? I'm teaching this class on ethics. Who's the boss here?
Say you are.
No.
God is.
Right.
Who's paying whom?
The master.
Dr. Semester. Who pays who in this classroom? Do I pay you? You pay somehow or another. With everybody taking a little piece of it as it works through the system. Somehow or another, I'm your servant for the week. I will do my best. I'm trying my best to sell you on a number of things. I suggest to you that a pastor is attempting to sell everybody whom he can influence to come to Jesus. To love the Lord with all of his heart, soul, strength, and mind. He is supposedly so committed to it, 1 Peter 5, he is willing to be an example. Take a look at me. Or as Paul says, follow me, following Jesus. Okay, Bebo, you're making a loop in the thought here. Who's the boss? Well, in a manner of speaking, you are. And I'm committing to you to do my best to sell you on my understanding of what the Bible teaches concerning particularly ethics. Okay. I want you to do your best to stay awake. I want you to do your best to hang in there with me. I don't mind interruptions one bit in a good educational, pedagogical climate. The material is a means to an end and not an end unto itself. Can I say this to future preacher boys? Actually, your sermon is a means to an end and not an end unto itself. Particularly young preachers don't seem to know how well to craft the sermon for the sake of communicating within the normal limits. I'll tell you in a moment, I dealt with recruiting young campus ministers and having to scold them. You need to be aware of many things, and that is your congregation, your people. You're trying to sell, you're trying to persuade, you're trying to lead people, saying, follow me, following Jesus. Use the best technique you can to entice people to follow you, following Jesus. Oh, okay, Bebo, you're making a loop again. I'm here as your servant. I'm old enough that I'm finally arriving at the point of I don't particularly need your approval anymore. It's always nice, but I don't need your approval. So here are some of the rules that come out with my being managing the class as your servant. One is I can't stand at that lectern all day. I've got one brand new knee and another one on the way. This is the way we do it. And I am very interruptible. Part of the subthesis of what I was just saying is that my notes are a means. If we don't get through them and we have wonderful class discussions, all the better. All the better. Probably the best study year I had was at Union Theological Seminary in Richmond, Virginia. The two of us were graduate students under Dr. James Smiley. Incidentally, he would give us an assignment on whatever day it was, let's just say Monday. And the next Monday, we were to come to class with really having written a fairly exhaustive paper. He was rushing us through the library all week. He knew what he wanted us to discover. And the next week, we would sit in his office and the three of us would discuss the topic at hand. I thought it was great. I thought it was just absolutely good. Really, it was good. It was good. It was good. He was sort of a classic, insecure, neo-Orthodox. The first thing he said to me when the first day I walked in his office up in one of the tombs, one of the old buildings there, I sat down. He looked at me and he said, "What does a fundamentalist like you doing at a place like this?" But he knew his stuff. And a graduate seminar was a whole lot better than Zoo 101. As a graduate student at Florida State, I taught Zoo 101. Freshman, it's much better to be in a graduate seminar. Had a professor at Florida State. Ended up being on my committee there, but European intellectual history. Sounds quite intimidating, especially when you just read the title of the course. I walked into a class about this big. There are probably 14 of us in this class, graduate class, and professor told us the textbooks or whatever, and sent us on our way. We walked back in the next week. He perched himself on the table and he said, "What do you want to talk about?" "What do you mean, what do you want to talk about?" "You're supposed to give us a bunch of dates that we're supposed to have memorized so we can write them down on a piece of paper and you can give us a grade." Two of us figured out that the man wanted to discuss the materials in which he was rubbing our noses. And the rest of the class wanted dates to memorize. "What do y'all want to talk about?" This is a means to an end. And let's see if I can provoke aha events, experiences. Is that good? Is that okay? Got it? Method's all right? I sat in a lot of classes. I did 5 years after seminary. Professors. I found it to be exhilarating. What do you want to talk about? I'm rubbing your nose in the information. What kind of gestalt shifts are occurring with you because of what I'm forcing you to encounter? Okay, pure method. I'll read through notes and I'm gonna do something a little bit different today. I'm gonna work you through a few little other notes, trying to set a context. But I don't take breaks unless I need it. You need to go to the bathroom, go to the bathroom. Why burn up 15 minutes every hour? Especially when you're on something of a roll. But if you need to go to the bathroom, you need to go to the bathroom. That's fine with me. Just go to the bathroom. If I do, I'll say 5-minute break. I'll be right back. We save time that way, and I'll let you out early in the afternoon. How about that? That sounds cool to me. If I'm here at 5 o'clock, it's because I'm comatose.
So we're not staying till 6?
We're not staying till 7. I'll give you an assignment pretty late afternoon. Most of it you can do right here. Some of it just take and go home, do it if you want to. Some things that I want you to be scanning and reacting to. Too much is too much. Too much sitting right here is too much sitting right here. Well, Bebo, with breaks, people can, can cool their mind off a little bit and absorb better. Well, maybe not. You have some of your better learning experiences when you're arguing for 3 hours on a Friday night with some of your classmates. When we were, I tease, when we were at Deformed Biological Cemetery, every Friday night we had roast professor. Pipers and the chases and the herrings. We'd go to different houses, and we would discuss the week. We'd straighten out those professors on Friday nights. Okay, it's up to you to make something of the class. You're an adult, aren't you? I think you are. You're sort of looking like it to me. Well, I'm not really sure, but I believe you are. Adults have to make adult decisions, don't they? Your wife has a problem tomorrow, and you need to take one of the kids to the doctor. Who knows what? You just have to make adult decisions. You're paying for this class, or somebody's paying for you to have this class. Make the best of it while making adult decisions. You know how many people know what my GPA was going through seminary? One. You know how many Presbyterians care what your GPA was? Unless it was, 1.1. I don't care. I put the wrong pronoun in the sentence. Let me start the sentence over. My goal in seminary was to beat my classmates in grades. Pretty tough to beat Dr. Piper. Yeah, and he didn't have photographic, but he would take my notes and make a better grade in the class than I would. He did. He's a pretty bright boy. My goal was grades. At this point in life, that sounds so silly. Who cares? Apply yourself and get the best of this class that you think you can get, and take with you whatever is worth taking. You okay? No questions. My wife says that my older brother and I can fill all empty space with words. We won't have too many lag times. But I am even happier when you say, I may not agree with what you just said, dummy. Don't call me dummy. But at least you need to explain yourself a little better. I don't mind the challenge. Okay with you? Okay. That closes segment about how the class operates. All right. Well, I'm going to find out who you are in a minute. I'll tell you who I am. I'm 5 months older than Dr. P. Nick Wilburn's one of my really good friends. I've got to buy a supper tomorrow night. We cut our teeth under Dr. Smith. Okay. We challenged Dr. Smith. We had tables about like this, and we sat on the front row. We're going to stop him. And it was pretty rare that anybody stumped Dr. Smith. Born in Mississippi, Christian family, not a strong Christian family. Older brother, who was my spiritual father in many ways. He's 6 years older. I'm 76. He's 82. He went to Belhaven College. I went to Belhaven College. Back in those days, the preacher train went right to Columbia Seminary in Atlanta. He did. He's been a PCA teaching elder, now honorably retired, but he also went back, did graduate work, clinical psychology. So he was a clinical psychologist, teaching elder, started the Christian Psychological Center, Second Church, Memphis, big event. Eventually was on the staff at IPC in Memphis. Okay. I grew up with a psychologist brother who was a spiritual father to me in many ways and still is. All right, went to Belhaven College, ran with a big, good bunch of guys, Joey being one. I could tell you the litany, you're not interested in it. The Aquila Report? Who reads anything from the Aquila Report? Pope Domino, we started calling him the Pope when we were freshmen. I can tell you a funny story about his wedding, but I won't. In Tutwiler, Mississippi. Pope Domino. RTS, deformed cemetery. In 68, graduated 71, wandered off, did graduate work, New England, Virginia, Florida. In the midst of which, in 74, got involved with what was going to become RUF. Incidentally married in 68. My wife supported me. It's a great way to go. Play a little racquetball, sit in a class or two, write a paper every now and then, and let the wife bring home the bacon. Which she did. She was a school teacher. 3 kids, came late. They were 40, 44, 41, and 40. 10 years into marriage, God changed our lives with children finally coming. Got involved with what was going to become RUF in 74. Headmaster of a Christian day school. Now it's a big school. Back into RUF in 82. Left in 2011. Unhappily, I was sort of the second guy in. And in 2011, there was the consummation of a big shift in RUF. And the 12-man committee, joint committee, 3 presbyteries joining 12 men, and I resigned together in summer of 2011. I'm not that happy with some of what I see out of RUF. But having said that, and another time, if you want to raise questions, I'm free to talk about it. Doesn't matter to me. But really nailed it, First Pres for 29.5 years, taught Sunday school a lot. A lot. Honorably retired, ruling elder. 2011, several of us started a 501c3, and I'll tell you more about it later in the week probably. But the 2 goals were to help seminary students figure out how to pursue a call, and churches and pastors how to get together. In the meantime, in the recent 2 or 3 years, I found myself managing a list of some 15 guys out preaching in vacant pulpits, some small, some a little bit larger, but helping churches as far as Lansing, Illinois, and Oregon, and Washington, and Boston, but primarily in the Deep South. Traveling with RUF recruiting and starting new campus ministries. I traveled as far as Santa Barbara and Savannah, but mostly in the Deep South. A lot of travel in earlier days. As a result of which, going to a lot of Presbyterian meetings, I think we got to know, well in teaching here for 20-something years, teaching 25 years maybe at RKS Jackson, teaching at Covenant, teaching in Charlotte. Got to know a lot of students because they would often think, well, if in Bebo's class, maybe I can get an inside track on doing RUF. And a lot of Presbyterian meetings, as a result of which I think we know people in a lot of presbyteries. I'll throw out a little bit of data right now. How many teaching elders are there in the PCA?
Like 6,000 or 8,000.
5,200. You're better than a lot of people are. Your guess, how many congregations?
3,000.
1775, 1780. How many presbyteries? 88. How many members? About 380, somewhere in there. How many OPC churches are there?
How many OPC?
LPC.
Maybe 385.
Somewhere around 325. How many ARP? Somewhere around 325. Got really good friends. In fact, I was in an ARP installation in Tennessee a week ago, Sunday night, a week ago last night. And one of my best friends is in an OP church in Chicago, Orland Park, actually, Ian Wright, who has a degree from here. And Brian DeYoung in Wisconsin, etc. And we were members of an OP church. And the pastor was Calvin Knox Cummings in Tallahassee, Florida. It was a great church experience. So a pretty good breadth of knowing people that helps with churches. We've dealt with about 100 churches since 2011. And some a little bit, some a whole lot, trying to help churches and pastors get together. So that's as much as you would want to know about me. Why am I here? Because of being Joey's friend and sympathies for Greenville. You're much like RKS was like in its early days. We love Dr. Smith. We want to do all we can to support Greenville and suggest when applicable, Greenville grads and PCA, OPC, ARP churches, when we can be expediters at that point, helpers. Any other data?
What's the name of the organization, Mr. Elkin, that you founded in 2011?
2011, thank you. Consulting Services Foundation.org. Run on word. Look us up. You'll see the good-looking guy. Consulting Services Foundation.org. And I'll do a little promo on it. I don't want to just throw all of that lanyap stuff in right now, but I'll do a little bit more promoing it. We have Greenville grads in Mississippi. So I'm hoping to see more of you come our way across the denominations. 3 we deal with mostly PCA, some OPC and some ARP. So Consulting Services Foundation.org. Okay. Let me ask you about you. Where is Tim Cook?
Right here.
Tim Cook.
Yes, sir. Tim Cook, originally from the Tampa, Florida area. Became reformed, a dozen years ago or so, joined the PCA. And whilst there about 5-6 years ago, started to sense a call to the ministry. So I went to a session, asked them about it, and they said that they thought that I was. So they said, where do you want to go to seminary? I said, well, I've looked at a couple of them at this point, and Greenville Seminary seems to be the best option, given their fidelity to the scriptures, to the standards. And they all smiled real big. They said, well, you know, Greenville's real strict, right? And I said, yeah.
Real strict, real strict.
I said, that's why I want to go. And so they said, that's the right answer. Good job. So, so I've been up here. I'm in my senior year now, looking to graduate this spring, Lord willing. I am currently doing an internship at Antioch PCA under Dr. P. Not necessarily under Zach, although I think he might be.
Zach is usually around more, isn't he?
A little more, yeah. But
He doesn't fish in Brazil and he doesn't.
no, he doesn't, travel off to go hunting all the time either. But he's here a lot more. So I'm doing that, and I've been learning a lot and looking to be careful how I say this. I would prefer to minister in the PCA since that's my denomination and I love it. But I will go wherever the Lord calls me to. Also would prefer to stay in the southeastern United States, but again, I'll go where the Lord calls me to go.
Good. You might guess that I have my concerns about our denomination, PCA. And I have my concerns in a fair number of people in a different emphasis area in the PCA or former campus ministers, and that concerns me. So, but I'm looking forward to Tim. I'll talk to you. He needs a call in Mississippi, doesn't he?
He thinks so.
Well, maybe so. Anything else, Tim? What your parents are alive? Your father?
Yes.
What?
Yeah, my parents are alive. They still live down in the Tampa area. Well, I suppose you were raised in a Christian family. I was raised in a Christian family. We were Baptists, non-denominational, but really Southern Baptist. So yeah, my parents are faithful Christians. They raised us in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. I shouldn't be as surprised as I am. My parents, we weren't perfect, but we had family worship more often than not. They sought to do it every single day. And, obviously weren't perfect. I didn't realize how rare of a thing that was for parents to sit down and open the scriptures with their children each day and sing hymns. And so they pointed us all to Christ. I'm the third born of 9 children.
9?
Probably that one up was 9. Yes. Yeah. So a big family. My parents were, faithful, taught us the scriptures, took us to church each Sunday, are not very strict on the Sabbath, but growing up, we weren't allowed to play sports on Sunday. Things were limited on Sunday because it was the Lord's Day. We were supposed to use that day to worship God. So for being non-denominational, Baptist, when I became Reformed, I look back on what they had taught me growing up and thought, oh, wow, they were not far off of the mark. Still alive, retired, now just hauling around my youngest siblings to their various functions.
Wow. What did your dad do?
He's a dentist.
Wow.
Yeah, went to the University of Florida, so.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, so you were talking about FSU, and I was like, well, I don't know if I can listen to Mr. Elkin.
For years we were at Florida State. The Criminals beat the Gators. We finally have a coach again for the Criminals. And we sent you a coach to Florida, but he didn't end up too well.
No, I didn't do too good.
Dan Mullins from Mississippi State. Anyway, maybe they deserve it. Okay, thanks, Tim. I do want to get to know you better. I want to get to know each of you better. That's really the thing. Always recruiting. Always recruiting. Okay, Cordial, Cortiel. Who is that?
I don't see him up there. He's normally a distance student, but I don't see him online unless it's not showing everyone.
He doesn't seem to be here. Joseph German.
Gehrman, that's me. You can just call me Joe.
Really? Joe's good.
Unless I'm in trouble.
The middleman.
Joseph.
Joe, from where?
Originally from Wisconsin, southern part, Madison area. It's about 2.5 hours north of Chicago. Grew up in a nominal evangelical home, was unregenerate until college, joined InterVarsity, got made a Bible study leader, so I had to read my Bible. And read my Bible, got converted through that and the online ministry of Mark Driscoll.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And became reformed. I thought his church plant network, the X29,
Where you went to college? Where'd you go?
University of Wisconsin Platteville.
Okay.
So not the Badgers, but in the UW system. And I thought the X29 were the only people who were reformed and preached the Bible. I didn't know Presbyterians were a thing.
Yeah.
And so after graduating, I found an X29 church, went there, but I discovered Carl Truman's podcast and listened to that because he was British. And I liked his dry sense of humor. And he was very insightful. So I listened to him, and then he turned me into a Presbyterian. And Googled for Presbyterian Seminary because I knew I wanted to go into the ministry. And Greenville has Presbyterian in the name. So that's how I found Greenville, is through a random Google search. Watched their YouTube video about what the seminary was about. It was a pretty low production video. But all they talked about was preaching. I was like, well, this is what I want to go do. So I showed up here.
Yeah. 4 years?
Yeah, I'm in my 4th year. In between coming from graduating college and coming here, I worked at a software company called Epic. They do electronic health records. Developer there for a while, and came to Greenville. Talked to Zach Groff on the phone. He was the only person I've ever talked to before coming here who owned Banner of Truth books. So I was like, "You've got Banner books. I got Banner books. This must be a place where I need to go because no one else owns Banner books around here."
Banner books, yay! Both of them.
I was like, I found my people. And so I showed up here, and I worship at Coming Community OPC down the road. And again, hoping to graduate this May.
Married?
Yep, wife, and we have our first son who's 6 months old.
Oh, good. Where do you want to go? Where do you want to be?
I need an internship after, so a year-long internship, hoping to get one at Covenant. They're still discussing the budget because they also need a building. So I'm waiting on them to find out where I am going.
You're waiting on their decision to know whether you're going there or not.
Yeah, because I really want to stay here and do an internship with Pastor Peter, but they're still working out exactly what they're doing.
How's Peter doing?
Doing well. He's been doing pretty well. He just had a niece pass away recently, so he just flew back to Canada this Lord's Day or before, and it's for the funeral. But otherwise, doing very well.
Good.
Did you know that they're expecting again?
Yep.
So that will, number 9 is on the way.
I thought I talked to him and he's got listen, did he? Okay. Tell him hello.
Yeah.
I need to be careful the way I say this. I talked to a fair number of telephone and email and Zoom meetings, what I do. There's been a shift in attitudes. Today, I run into a lot of, well, my wife wants. My wife wants to be near her parents. Okay. Or a lot of you Carolina guys, and Greenville's not known to be particularly Carolina-ish, general around-ish, but we want to be in the Carolinas. And it's always a part of my little early conversation. What is your geography? What geography will you tolerate?
I will go wherever. I don't like the cold, but that's why they made jackets.
Be a good friend.
Yeah.
Be a good friend in Sheboygan.
Sheboygan.
Brandy Young. Solid, good. I'll tell you a lot more about Brian.
I would like to go back to Wisconsin one day, because there's not much in Wisconsin in Reformed churches. The Bible where I went to college again there was 4 evangelical churches. Like there wasn't really preaching.
Yeah.
And if you wanted anything Reformed, you had to drive an hour and a half.
Yeah, I got you. Thanks.
Greenville.
Is it more Dutch Reformed up there?
I need to look again, but it seems that the Dutch are known for being Michigan. And then it seems like they crossed Lake Michigan and they got to the eastern border of Wisconsin. And they decided that was far enough from Michigan. And they did go farther. So that all along Lake Michigan, you'll find Dutch churches, even OPC, but actually into Wisconsin, there's nothing.
Okay, Kirk Gibbons.
That's me.
Hey, Kirk.
Hey. Speaking of Dutch Reformed, that's where I'm at up here. I think I'm also the senior member of the crew here. I spent about 20 years plus in the public school system, running from a call to the ministry, and found myself at Greenville later. I grew up in a Christian family. My dad was first a Baptist preacher from Bob Jones, then a RCUS pastor, and then was in the OP for 20 plus years. So very thankful for my raising and for the years of connections with people in multiple denominations. Came to Greenville because at the time I was living on the East Coast and was a elementary school principal and didn't know how I was going to go to seminary and provide for my family. So my pastor and I at the time started looking at what programs allowed distance education while we determined the viability of the call. So it started in 2017 with a couple of classes, and by God's grace, he systematically organized and upended our lives in such a way that we were able to move down there in 2020. But now we have moved out to South Dakota, where one of the United Reformed churches has brought us out here as year-long plus interns until I graduate and pass candidacy exams. So I've gone from RCUS to OP to now URC. And my wife, we've been married 16 years, almost 17 years. We have one son who's 5 that we adopted, and he came to us when he was 3 months old as a foster child, and then we were able to adopt a couple of years later in 2020. My wife did not grow up in a Christian home, but found herself at Gordon College in Massachusetts, where she ran into Bill Barclay, who at the time was pastoring the OPC church there on the North Shore at Ipswich, and was converted and she didn't know she fell in love with the Reformed faith, but that's what once we spent about 6 years talking, she figured that out. But we actually met while I was in Alaska teaching school, and she was in Cape Cod. So that was at the very beginning of internet communication, but the Lord is gracious in putting us where we needed to be. So looking forward to hopefully graduating here in May. And then from there, like I said, I'll be working on candidacy exams in the URC.
Wow.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can fix the camera to where it's looking at your head. Is it, or is it just cut off on our screen? Can y'all see Mr. Elkin's face?
Yeah.
Oh,
We can-
okay.
We can even see his feet.
I think it's just the, I think it's just the TV screens.
I didn't want y'all to be talking to a torso.
Do appreciate
No,
that,
we got it.
that hideous strength.
Okay.
Well, it's just these guys that don't want to see my face, I think. Ipswich, I've had conversations with people at Ipswich on the search committee up there. Bill Barkley, of course, I know Barkley, and Charlie Wingard.
Yeah.
Charlie is at my home church in Yazoo City, Mississippi, and full-time there and full-time RTS. I should have said my office is in the chapel at RTS Jackson. I'm not employed by the seminary, but I have good contacts with Charlie Wingard in my home church there, and Lynn, his wife. So who would have thought that I would run into somebody with Ipswich contacts?
Well, and actually Charlie Wingard was at Cape Cod, the Presbyterian Church of Cape Cod for a number of years. That was actually my home church when I came down to Greenville. James LaBelle is there now, but Pastor Wingard was on his way out when we moved up that way. So
That's fascinating.
yeah.
Good. Thank you. He's doing a good job at RTS. Barkley, he moved on. You can't count on him. Okay, Joe Ham.
I don't believe he is taking the class.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think he said he was gonna drive.
AOL. Eli.
Good
Herzl.
morning. I'm Eli Herzl. I grew up in a covenant family at a church in Southern California that was in transition. It was a church that originally was a Foursquare plant for about a year, then non-denominational for a long while, and then we ended up in the Orthodox Presbyterian Church while I was, I think, in grade school. So I'm very thankful for that too, because I being in that transition, there's just this very strong emphasis in the family as well as in the church to evaluate our culture and particularly our church culture, and look to the Word of God and see what's cultural and what's theological. Definitely joining the OPC winter camp as a young person was an interesting experience. It was probably the first time that I'd ever held a hymnal. And I kept asking people the question, why don't you just write these out in paragraphs rather than jumping from line to line to line, and what are all these squiggles here? But very thankful to grow up in that church. We probably look a little more like a PCA church than an OPC church at this point, but we've moved significantly from our roots to a more biblical liturgical form of worship. My parents were both converted in their 20s. So I'm I guess you could say a second generation Christian, and I've been very thankful to be raised in a family that really looks to the scriptures. We did family worship infrequently, but it was there. The Sabbath was a day set aside. And I'm single. Well, I'm seeing someone right now, but I'm unmarried. I was in Greenville for 3 years, and I moved back here as my mother's health was declining. Better kingdom work to be done out here for me right now. I'm looking to hopefully one day do missions for the OPC, which the way we have things worked out right now, takes a long time. Not just seminary, but usually laboring stateside. So I'm looking to labor here in the States for a couple years and then consider the mission field after. I'm not exactly sure where that will be at this point, probably somewhere here in Southern California. My Presbyterian is Southern California, Arizona, and Hawaii. And I'm talking with the regional home missionary about maybe going to Hawaii to do some church planting work. Just trying to think through that, pray through that. It sounds like a really nice place to be, which it is in a lot of ways. It's also a really hard field. Our one congregation out there has struggled a lot. The Hawaiian people are a tough nut to crack, but there's also 1.4 million people on the islands, and they need more Reformed churches. So I would love to be a part of that if the Lord would have me. But looking forward to laboring for Christ and his kingdom.
OP Church in Key West is looking for somebody.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've got a handful in my presbytery that are looking for guys as well.
yeah, okay.
4 or 5 empty pulpits. So
Yeah,
Which OP church are you at, Eli, in Southern California?
it's called Branch of Hope. Paul Vigiano is the pastor.
What's the city?
It's in Torrance,
Yeah, all right.
so in Los Angeles County. There's a large 4-square church in a neighboring city, and it's almost like every church in the area was at one point affiliated with that church. Usually they would hire on a few pastors. Guys would go in one way or another theologically. There would be what they call a church plant, which is usually just a mini church split, and it's propagated a lot of churches throughout the South Bay area. I'm not entirely sure if ours was a plant or a little bit of a split, but either way, we have our roots there, and we end up being a very different OPC church because we still have a lot of the culture left over from our earlier days. We've actually, I think, even though like looking at my church, there's a lot of things that I would like to see improved upon. At the same time, it's been a really good congregation for people at evangelical churches who either they're reading their Bibles or they pick up an R.C. Sproul book or something like that, and they realize that what they're hearing from the pulpit isn't exactly what is said in Scripture, but they're not people ready to jump into a OPC congregation. So we've been a really good net for that demographic, which I'm thankful for.
good. Good, Eli. Stuart, where are you?
I'm in the Denver metro area.
Hmm.
I don't know if it's my turn.
Yep, I'm calling. You got it? Go.
I was not raised in a Christian home. Unfortunately, my mom died as an atheist. My dad is still an atheist. My wife of 23 going on 24 years was also not raised in a Christian home. Her mom died and her dad is still not a believer. So we're kind of plucked out of our families in a way. Heard about the Lord when I was in my teens, had a bit of a conversion experience, went back into the world, and he really got a hold of me when I was about 19. Read the book of Matthew. It just really pressed hard on me. Turned from a lot of the things I was doing, went and got a job in a warehouse, started listening to Christian radio. I really liked MacArthur. Decided I might want to enter ministry. Went out and talked to Master Seminary, and they said that I needed a bachelor's degree. So I said, okay, I guess I got to go get a bachelor's degree. went to master's college for 1 year. Decided it was better to be back here in Colorado. And had found that I really liked historical theology when at master's. So I started looking at programs that had Latin languages, found a classics program at CU. So went and did Latin and Greek language at the University of Colorado Boulder. After graduation, didn't really feel a sense to call at that time. So went into the business world and have, like Kirk, kind of been running from a call for a long time. Listened to R.C. Sproul's series on Jonah. Found myself at a stoplight crying, felt that my life was over because I felt called into the ministry. And signed up for Greenville. That was 9 years ago. I've been working, full-time job, providing for my family, kind of a lot like Kirk, figuring out how I can go to seminary and provide for my family. I've done it distance. I'm a ruling elder in the Orthodox Presbyterian Church. I've gone in and out of a sense of call. In October, lost my job, and my wife said, now's the time to just focus on seminary. They gave me a severance. And so I am making a run for graduation in May, and, very interested in your organization there, Mr. Elkin, because I'm wrestling with a call if I should go after something or not. And that's kind of where I'm at the moment. Like I said, I've gone in and out of a sense of call. I'm kind of in it right now, but again, feel like my life is going to be over if I enter ministry, which it probably will be in a good way. He who seeks to save his life will lose it, and he who loses it will find it. Right. So, yeah, that's me in a nutshell. I do have two kids. I should mention I have a 14-year-old and a 13-year-old and a 3-year-old, both about to have birthdays.
Okay. How many of y'all know Stuart? We don't know. Colorado. How did you get Greenville's name from Denver, Colorado?
So also like Kirk, I felt like I wanted something remote. And the philosophy of our session was kind of, hey, you sit under us and we'll bring you up into ministry. We'll show you how it's done, get the education, but we'll give you I've been in a 9-year internship under the session. So one of our elders had tried to go to Greenville when it was, I think, kind of early with some of the remote stuff. He said he struggled with some of the technology. I don't think it was even close to what it is today. He didn't end up finishing, but he knew about Greenville. I looked at RTS, and then it came down to there's a fellow named Brian Prouty who did the distance. I called him, and he told me it was very solid. And then there's a family at our church, the Nelsons. Caleb Nelson had gone to Greenville. He's now a PCA minister in Gillette, Wyoming. I talked to him, and he recommended it. And so it was really between RTS and Greenville. And I think it came down to distance and price. And so I went with Greenville, and I'm eternally grateful that I did.
Great.
Worshiping with Hans Nelson right now.
Hans, they just left to the there's a Brian Prouty just did a church plant in Windsor up north, and Hans and Kate left to be part of that church plant. I think they've recruited him to be their controller or something, because he's a finance guy. But yes, I know Hans.
If you see him, tell him Eli says hello.
I'll try to remember. Yeah, they're expecting.
Probably say something smart back to you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They're a witty family. So, but January 31st, Kate's due. So.
Great. Thanks, Stuart.
Yep.
James Lee,
Yes, Mr. Elkin, I go by.
how you there, go?
Thank you. I grew up in Southern California. My dad was a project manager for the Naval Shipyard. It seemed like, out of 10 people, 2 or 3 worked for Boeing or the shipyard. I grew up in a pretty eclectic Southern California climate. Boeing collapsed, the shipyard closed. My dad's mistress called on Christmas. I was 14. So kind of just, the world just sort of came crashing down about 14. And so got really into some rebellion, hardcore music in Orange County, California, running around with a lot of knuckleheads. The Lord called me to himself. I was 22, or about to turn 22. Got married at 25, went back to college, went back to school. Got into the University of California, Irvine and UCLA. Went to Irvine because of their MFA program. I had an eye to their MFA program, top 5 program in the country, UVA, Iowa, Boston, Michigan. And so it was the program I wanted to go to. Studied there under James McMichael, who was at Stanford, and Michael Ryan. And so just loved it and had every intention of teaching at the college level. I always had a respect for institutions. My dad, as a product of an institution, teaching, especially education, was a veritable institution. So I always wanted to attach myself to one. 2015, I'm at a department meeting in Southern California, and we're told we're racist because we're products of racist institutions. So that really began a paradigm shift in our home. We were reforming. My wife was teaching in the public schools, and we basically pulled out. I started talking to our session, or actually a pastor of an evangelical free church, about ministry. In a funny way, we found this little, Eli's filling a pulpit right now on Sunday evenings at this little Orthodox Presbyterian church. I knew nothing of Presbyterianism. I was just concerned with the way our church was handling the sacrament, namely the Lord's Supper. So I wasn't doing a lot of reading. I was teaching, and I was kind of just searching for a solid church, and found the Orthodox Presbyterian Church, little church in Westminster. It's actually a Vietnamese community, so you'd never really know it was there, which is probably why it struggled to grow. And we started sitting under the preaching of Pastor B.J. Gorell, one of the first graduates that came through here. And I say he preaches like his hair's on fire. Theological, robust. He brings some great things in. So I just thought, wow. About 2 years, you're just getting fed normal week to week. We had been essentially anemic. Really started to see the place of worship in the home. So again, that was contributing to this radical paradigm shift. 2017, I came under care and was looking to pursue ministry, traditional ordained ministry. I'm actually no longer pursuing that, but I'm going to finish, I think, the MA. Westminster, our home church, has been very kind. They have supported me. So I have tuition, has never been an issue. Right now I'm pivoting a little. I'm looking at possibly getting back into a Christian. I want to work at a Christian university. So maybe you have some Belhaven connections. Charleston Southern, we had some talks with them. I've talked with Montreat, but it's just nothing has been quite a fit yet. So looking to possibly get back into Christian, actually academia, writing. I've been writing pretty consistently now. So I've got a manuscript out now for looking to probably be published by a small literary press, and just trying to stay active. So applying for a lot of conferences, presenting material as often as I can, teaching down the road at Spartanburg Community College. So it's going to be a busy semester for me. I've got 4 classes. So looking to finish strong, and just see what the Lord will have.
Tell me again, your degree?
My MFA is in creative writing. So I write poetry and publish poetry. I'm a generalist by trade, meaning I can teach just about any English course offering. I've taught the critical reading and writing, lit. I've taught developmental writing, looked at college level composition. So I'm pretty much a generalist in that way. But my main area of interest in my writing has been the American family. So looking at notions of domesticity, a lot of that coming out of the breakdown of my own family growing up. So my manuscript is largely looking at that period of time, about 12 to 14. My protagonist is about a 12 to 14-year-old boy. His voice is partially sort of unformed, violent. There's a certain kind of violence in it in the manuscript, I think. I've always looked to Southern writers, Robert Penn Warren, Flannery O'Connor. I like that kind of plain style with a kind of visceral quality to it. My professor at Irvine, a phenomenal writer, but I would say more discursive. So his whole thing is the mind moving in and around the subject. So I've got kind of both of those things. The reading at Greenville's been great, incorporating some of the theology and thinking about some of the applications of that theology in the literature. So it's been a great opportunity to come out here and study. I just won't be pursuing vocational ministry per se, traditional pulpit ministry.
And brother, I missed your name. Sorry. Who was speaking?
Ryan Lee.
Oh, hey, Ryan. All right.
Okay. How are you doing this?
Well,
You go, but that's not going to pay. That's adjunct.
so right now it's been a tough go. I was trying to, work and go to seminary. It was a rough first year and second year. Just could never really get back on the track, on the rails. So my wife is doing a little bit of work for a co-op. We're piecing together a very small salary. I came out, bought a house cash, so that kind of thing. But I mean, yeah, it's tough. So right now I'm looking at like trying to get to work, like get a job where I can stay the next 30 years. That's my goal. So I've really had to say no to some people. I've really had to be selective. And so if I make a move, my goal is that job's going to be a place where I can be at for the next 30. That's kind of my idea.
We need elders in Hawaii.
That's quite expensive there.
Not gonna buy a house cash there, huh?
No.
We'll get you a little shack.
Maybe. In one sentence, you would not pursue ministry because.
Well, I would say at this particular juncture, the languages were the threshold for me, and getting over that was sort of just feeling insurmountable physically, emotionally. Just didn't seem to have a heart or will or mind for that. It's nothing intellectual. I mean, that I believe that it has nothing to do with that kind of thing. It's just, the mode and the structure of those courses was just it's alien to me. I mean, just no experience for that. I used to sit in classes, seminars, and come in with a reading, and we're just talking. We're sitting around with other gifted writers and just talking about their work. So memorization, the kind of rote mechanical, I've just, I think my body just resisted it. So I'm glad to be finishing the MA, though, to be honest with you, Mr. Elkin, at this point. That's actually an encouragement, because I just wasn't sure if I was going to even do that. My home church, Westminster Orthodox Presbyterian Church, has been kind, and they've been longstanding donors to the school. So that's really the only reason why I'm able to continue and complete it. So I'm thankful for that.
For what it's worth, I'm a double seminary grad and other work. I've never been a TE.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm out preaching right now most every Sunday. I like it on this side of the line. It's not bad.
Good.
Thanks. Bradley, where are you?
I'm right here. Can you see me?
I got you now. You've been off screen so far.
Yes. Well, I'm Bradley Lopez. I'm from Puerto Rico. I grew up in a Roman Catholic church. When I was 19 years old, well, 18 years old, my parents began to visit a Baptist church, and they started inviting me. So when I was 19 years old, I went to the Baptist church, and that was the first time that I heard the gospel. God saved me when I was 19. Like 2 years after that, I went to Conway, Arkansas to do my bachelor degree in science of missions.
Where?
In Arkansas, Conway, Arkansas.
What school?
Central Baptist College. Central
Okay,
Baptist
okay,
College.
okay. Mhm.
Yeah, I graduated in 2010. Then I moved back to Puerto Rico. Well, I spent a year in Arkansas. I used to work in a Hispanic church in Little Rock. After that, we moved back to Puerto Rico and to work in a Baptist church here. And less than a year, I left the church and I became Presbyterian. So I started planted church here in Puerto Rico. So I'm a OPC church planter here on the island. We have 8 years church. I've been planting for 8 years. Hopefully we particularize this year, and hopefully I graduate in May.
Right.
I have 7 children.
You have what?
7 children.
You have what?
7. Perfect number. 7.
Perfect wife.
Yes, she is.
Oh, okay. So there's a call to the church?
Well, no, a call for me?
Yeah.
Not yet. Hopefully it will be.
Okay. People are looking for Spanish-speaking pastors.
In the States?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And well, I'm working also in a church in the west of the island, so we need people here too.
Okay. Thanks, Brandy. That's good. Okay, Vincentius.
Yeah, it's Vinicius.
Oh, okay.
That's fine. Yeah, I am originally from Brazil. Grew up in a non-Christian home, but on my mom's extended family, there are some Christians. Her 2 brothers are Christians and pastors in a non-denominational church. When I was about 14, my grandfather died, and that's when I started to consider the claims of Christianity and the reality of salvation, sin, eternal life. I eventually was converted in that non-denominational church, stayed there until 2012. By that time, I was coming to know the Reformed faith with then she was my fiance, now my wife. And we started looking for a Reformed church. Ended up in a church. At the point, it was a church plant. The pastor lived in Greenville for a while. He did his doctoral studies at Greenville Seminary. So we got to know Dr. Pipa around 2013. And as soon as he heard that I wanted to go to seminary, he offered a scholarship. So, but my wife didn't speak English at the time, and I wasn't sure I had been called to the ministry. So we decided to wait for a while. It took about 6 years. So in 2019, we moved to Greenville, and I will graduate, Lord willing, this semester. But we had to fly to Brazil. We are adopting a son. He was 2 months old when we came. He's about to turn 4. So we're here in Brazil until we finalize his passport, visa, get everything, and we should go back to the US for the rest of the semester.
Good, great. Good event, good story. David Rios.
He was the one who talked to you earlier, the IT. Yeah.
Thank you. And Caleb.
That's me, Caleb Willingham.
That's right. That's right. You put on a little weight, I think, since it's.
Probably so. In the last 5 years. Yeah, Caleb Willingham, like I mentioned earlier, I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina. I grew up in a believing home. My parents are believers. I grew up in a Lutheran church. We were kind of conveniently Lutheran. It was across the street from our neighborhood. That's where we kind of got plugged in when I was a kid. And so that's where I grew up. I think that they preached the gospel as a pretty seeker sensitive church, kind of in the early 2000s. We had the band and the plays and all the kind of stuff to try to draw people in. But I do think that I heard the gospel, whether through my parents or through the church or both. And so I, by God's grace, came to faith at an early age. I don't really remember a time when I didn't know and love the Lord and embrace Christ for my salvation. And I'm very thankful for that. And so I grew up in that church. It was a fairly man-centered theology as well. So, and just kind of moralistic, how to live a good life and things like that. So I was, and still am, but especially then was very much like the Pharisee in the story we read, that I was better than everyone else. And, I was the well-behaved kid and everyone else had all the problems. But over the years, I learned more and more the grace of the gospel. But I started going to a little private Christian school in 7th grade and went there all the way through until I graduated. And so that was hugely influential for me. It was probably loosely Southern Baptist or non-denominational in its affiliation, but I don't think I had an official theological position, just generally evangelical. And so I was really able to learn things from a Christian perspective, history and science and all those kind of things. And that was very helpful, and had a really good mentor at the school who had gotten a degree at CIU, Columbia International University. I think he had gotten a Bible degree or something like that. And so he was probably my age at the time, I guess now. And so I had a mentor in high school. He got me more and more interested in God's word and studying it and teaching it. The school had a lot of opportunities for students to be involved in leading little small groups and Bible studies and things and retreats and all that. So I was able to get some good experience in what it would be like to serve and to open God's word with other students and to really dig deep and try to apply it to our lives. And so I kind of got a taste of that and really enjoyed that. And then but I was just kind of bouncing around at different youth groups, non-denominational youth groups with some of my friends. But in high school, 10th grade, junior year maybe, I started going to a PCA youth group with my sister. I have a twin sister and 2 older brothers, but she had started going there with some of her friends. I started going a little bit later, and really through that youth group really fell in love with the depth and the richness of the Bible teaching and the theology. And it was just a breath of fresh air after kind of very shallow teaching for so long. It was really enjoyable to get to discuss with the youth pastor. He would ask us questions and we'd be able to interact with what he was teaching, and it was really helpful. And then a year or 2 later at a beach retreat with that youth group, one of the elders of the church who was chaperoning pulled me aside and asked if I had ever considered pastoral ministry. I hadn't really up to that point. I think I wanted to be a lawyer or something like that. I'm really glad that the Lord called me away from that. But I really, that was when kind of the wheels started turning, and I really, it really started a conviction in my heart that I think this is what the Lord is calling me to and is equipping me for. And so I started to think about college and wanting to learn how to study the Bible and how to teach it. So I went to North Greenville University, just down the road, 2014. and got a Christian studies degree. They're a Southern Baptist school. I was probably still Baptistic. Freshman year of college is when I probably came to the dark side, I guess, on infant baptism. Presbyterian government seemed like a no-brainer. It just seemed really well thought out and like a good idea, even in high school, but I wasn't sold on baptism. I just never even heard of the categories of covenantal baptism and things. I just kind of assumed believer's baptism or credo baptism. And so that was kind of the last domino to fall, but really came to embrace that. But even though it's a Southern Baptist school, a lot of the Christian studies faculty are at least somewhat Calvinistic. Some of them are a little more kind of out about it than others. Some are a little coy about their Calvinistic leanings. But anyway, the faculty was really good, really had a great education there. And especially they taught us to write well and to study, read well and to interpret well. So really thankful for that. And then I started dating my now wife in my senior year of college. She had actually gone to the same high school that I went to. She was a few years younger than I. And so she came to North Greenville my senior year. And so we started dating. And so I wanted to stay in Greenville. I've been at the church that I'm at now in Travelers Rest Redeemer PCA. I started coming there freshman year of college. And so I also really loved my church here.
Who's the pastor?
It's now Nick Turner. He came from Westminster PCA in Rock Hill. But yeah, I wanted to stay in Greenville because I had made really good friends. I loved the church that I was with. I wanted to continue not having to be long distance with Lauren. And so I heard about Greenville Seminary and talked to Zach and found that this was a really robust and good seminary. And it was, I'm so thankful for it. I came in definitely still with a lot of broad evangelical tendencies from my upbringing. And so it was challenging to read through the Westminster Standards. I had never read them or really even probably heard of them until I came here. And so it was helpful to wrestle with the Sabbath and the second commandment, the big kind of issues that most people haven't studied or thought about until they come to the Reformed faith. And so it's just been really wonderful to learn that the Reformed faith is more than just the 5 points of Calvinism, but just to see how cohesive and coherent and comprehensive it is. So, and then Lord willing, I'll graduate in May, and then looking to probably be in the PCA. I've been in talks with a couple churches, but haven't officially accepted a call anywhere yet.
Okay. Thank you. Internship
Yeah, I'm doing my internship through Calvary Presbyterian right now.
to be completed.
Yes, yeah, so I should, Lord willing, have that done by May, all the requirements. I think I have most of the requirements done.
Be sure to have Presbyterian approve it.
Okay.
Be really sure.
Mhm.
You won't get a call without it.
Right.
Okay. Good. Any other questions?
You skipped
Yeah,
David.
we had, I guess he may not be on the roster. Looks like.
Mathis.
Who's that?
David Mathis.
I think I got added to the roster late.
Oh, David. Okay.
Hey, I'm here from the UK. So I
Oh,
don't
yeah.
know if
I'm sorry, David. You and I have been communicating.
I suppose I take the cake for being one of the furthest.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Well, my story starts actually with my mother and father who met in California in Grace Community Church, where John MacArthur is, of course. My mother is English and my father is Californian. My mother's father was an artist and he began working for Disney. So they moved out to the San Fernando Valley and they met in that church there, where John MacArthur was the minister. They moved back to England, and I was born in 1996 in Bury St Edmunds, just up the road from the real Ipswich. But 2 weeks after my birth, we flew to Pennsylvania in the States. My parents at this stage were just coming to Presbyterian convictions themselves. We moved back over to the UK, to Northern Ireland. And my father was at this stage, he was working as a computer programmer. And when we moved to Northern Ireland, we joined the Reformed Presbyterians, the Covenanters in Northern Ireland. And my parents sort of grew in their Presbyterian convictions over that space of time. When I was about 10 years old, I was converted. The Lord spoke to me through my father's daily Bible time that we did, our family worship. And I remember the family worship really well. It was the first time I remember actually asking him questions and peppering him with questions. And it was really about heaven and hell. What are these places, Dad? What is heaven? What is hell? And the magnitude of them, I think, hit me. Hell is an eternal place. Heaven is an eternal place. And I knew that, even having grown up in a Christian home, I knew that if I didn't give my life to Christ, that I would be doomed because of my sin. So I remember giving my life to the Lord at the age of 10.
Oh.
And at that point, we moved back over to the States. Dad had gotten a job just over the border in Ohio, and we were living in Pennsylvania, Mercer County, Pennsylvania, near Pittsburgh. And the first year that we were there, my grandfather, who was the animator, he passed away after a car crash. And my grandmother wanted to help my father at that point, who had had a long-standing call to the ministry. She wanted to help him fund his seminary training. So at that point, my father trained at RPTS in Pittsburgh. And for him, it was 3 of the best years of his life. And I think it was probably at that stage, I was a young Christian myself. I was just coming before my session to make a profession of faith, and began taking communion for the first time. And it was around that time, as I saw my father training for ministry, that there was a spark within me that I wanted to be like my dad. Dad graduated 3 years later. Although he was a man mature in his years, in his 50s, he was top of his class. We were all very proud of him. And he got a call to 2 rural congregations in South Armagh in Northern Ireland. So us children went from a vibrant Christian school environment where we were all learning and making friends there in Pittsburgh, outside of Pittsburgh, to rural South Armagh, where people talk about the cows and the weather, and there were no young people my own age. And I think all of us children, I'm one of 7, by the way, I think all of us children kind of went through withdrawal from our life and our friends in America. And there came a point, I don't know if it was 6 months in or a year into Dad's ministry there, when I began to realize that I needed to stop looking at what I had lost and see myself as part of this family, and see myself as part of a new congregation where I could serve. So I tried my best to be helpful to my father, to be welcoming to people in the church, to make as many friends there as I could. But it was tough. But I think that year was really helpful for me, because it taught me that the Christian life is not all about receiving, but it's about giving as well. And giving when you don't get much in return either. During that time, my father had some very difficult presbytery work that he had to deal with. There was a difficult pastoral case in one of the congregations that rumbled on for 2 or 3 years. And my father, almost that brought him to breaking point, I think. He was quite new to the ministry himself. He had 2 congregations, and he was the moderator of presbytery during just a very difficult time in this other local church. And I saw him almost come to breaking point in the ministry. And I remember for him, the tragedy of it was that he couldn't spend as much time with his family as he wanted to. But even through all of that, seeing the difficulties of ministry, I still wanted to go into the ministry. So after my high school education was complete, I decided, you know what, I'll go and do a degree in microbiology in Queen's University in Belfast. Not because I thought that would be a useful preparation for seminary training, but because I thought I want to give an open door for the Lord to say in my life, ministry is not, you know, ministry is not for you. And I knew that if the ministry was not really my calling, then I would need a job I could get I'd need a degree I could get a good job with. So I did microbiology, absolutely loved it, and loved getting involved in the Christian Union there in Queens, serving on my local CU. And then after that, my graduation, I did 6 months of voluntary work in a church to test my gifts. And from that point on, I was sure that I wanted to go into the ministry. I then moved to Scotland. I worked in a science lab for 8 months and McDonald's in the drive-through for about 2 years. Probably one of the best jobs I've ever had. Absolutely loved it. Yeah, it was great. And then I became aware of a seminary in Newcastle upon Tyne, which had been set up by Bill Schweitzer from the EPCW. And I applied, and I've been here the last 2.5 years or so. I'm just running into my final semester now. It's quite a small seminary. There's not very many people studying at the seminary here. In fact, last year we lost one of our best students, Brad Egan. Some of you might know Brad. He's recently moved over to Greenville. Our loss is very much your gain. Yeah, I've got 8 modules standing between me and freedom.
Good. Thank you, Dave. Good to see you. Good to know you. You've come back and forth to the US so many times. Do you want to be in Northern Ireland, Scotland, US, Pennsylvania, California, what?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would love to stay in the UK. I would love to stay particularly in England. The English Presbyterian church here is really, it's kind of like the Wild West of Presbyterianism. It's very grassroots. The denomination has only been in existence about 25 years.
Huh.
So in many ways, the denomination here is still figuring out how to be Presbyterian. A lot of people that come into the church here are from Baptist, Congregational, Church of England backgrounds. So Presbyterianism, as the other denominations, seem to be going more and more liberal, particularly the Church of England. The Presbyterian Church seems to be the safe haven for the conservative evangelicals within the Church of England. In fact, recently we've just had a whole congregation from the south of London that has unanimously voted, yeah, we'll trade the 39 articles for the Westminster Confession. So yeah, we're a growing denomination. Yeah.
Great. Okay, good, thanks. Who in here and the whole group knew everybody? Anybody? That's interesting. Great, it's good to get to know you. Turn with me to your ethics syllabus, please. Let's talk about that a little bit. I am assuming that each of you got by email the notes, right?
notes
I think those are the ones Laney posted on the dashboard.
on sanctification?
Yes, well, ethics, sanctification, history, philosophy.
It's all in Vancouver Drive.
But did everybody get all 3 sets by email?
There was one giant document. You have multiple documents.
No, I just have the one document. I thought when he said you could access everything in the Google Drive folder, it does not have access to that.
Wait, yes,
One question real quick. Are we gonna be breaking for lunch?
yes,
Okay,
we'll do that.
just that's all I was wondering.
Yeah, we'll break about noon.
Oh, noon, thank you so much.
Well, we've got a 66-page file, which Laney's post, she said, is this the ethics plus history, philosophy, and sanctification. It's not 3 different files, it's just one.
But one file has all 3 sets.
That's what she said.
There's no like title on the document.
Briefly looked through that.
Yeah, the document's called Sanctification Outline.
Was this by email?
Yes,
And it's on Populi as well.
Beginning of the thing that's
On the bulletin board, Laney
Scroll
posted
down.
a link to the document.
okay.
and it ends
Let's see the beginning of it.
the beginning.
Yeah, let me see the beginning.
So this was the beginning. So just this is where it starts. So
Starts.
yeah, this is the very first thing.
Okay. I come with a substitute idea.
I can go post this.
Verify, I had it verified before I left home, but would you verify that there are 3 sets of class outlines in there? 1 is ethics, 2 is sanctification, and 3 is history of philosophy. I'm going to make references to history of philosophy and sanctification. But to the best of our ability, granted, see, then everybody has all of my notes. You're not having tediously to try to write things down, and I'll just be turning from page to page and making references. So I want you all to have all 3 sets of notes, please.
So Joe, you're uploading those.
So there's
I'm sorry for the breakdown. I don't know how it happened, but we can get it rectified potentially.
so here's the drive. Which files you want?
Okay, I want the sanctification. Philosophy. And can you open?
I think ethics might start on page 46. So it starts with sanctification. Looks like ethics is on page 46. I'm looking to see if I can find, what's the other one, Mr. Elkin, that you're looking for? Philosophy of,
History of philosophy.
it might just be jumbled up.
Ethics one.
No, it's not that's just a portion of the sanctification, I think. That's a portion of the sanctification lectures.
This thing on page 46.
So these 3
Sanctification,
files that are in the blue there.
history of philosophy, and we're trying to find the ethics. Go to these two that are saying ethics.
This one.
Yeah.
It's a little different.
If you look on page 54 too, that looks like the beginning of the notes. Because the next page 55 says page 2, but I don't know if,
I'll jump on it.
I think they might just,
Oh my, oh my.
Yeah. it's like everything.
So you had no idea about a preliminary examination?
We knew about that.
We knew that we were supposed to have that.
There was 17 questions on that.
Yes.
Yeah. Right for that.
Look, the easiest thing for me to do is just to show you the beginning of the ethics. Well, the ethics has a syllabus in it, It has a preliminary exam. It has suggested presentation topics. It has the general outline for the class, a 2-page outline for class, and then it gets into the first section, and there's where ethics begins. Ethics.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you the drive. My computer's having an issue right now.
Drone. I don't know what to do. I'm at a loss.
How hard would it be to take a break and scan them real fast? Send them over.
Well, is someone say that's the easiest thing to do right now?
Let Tim take a look. It might, do we want to take just a 5-minute bathroom break now and get this sorted out?
Yeah, I mean,
Might be a lot of pages to scan now.
well,
If
We-
you have
we-
Laney take it down to the multifunctional document printer, it should be able to scan them to email.
Should I just go get Lenny real quick? If she's available.
is this what we're doing?
Go see if
Yeah,
she
go.
Even if you just scan what we need for today, that might be enough.
Did you get the
I moved over to your church.
syllabus?
Grounds, the syllabus is posted, yes.
Yeah,
I
they.
think, and I know Suzanne. I
The
don't
course
know.
description, course objectives, assignments? Got that.
That's all
Yeah,
posted.
they used to be at Redeemer, like when it.
What's that,
started.
and what document is that?
For a little while, figured it
That
out.
is actually just, was posted as a separate document on the website.
An eclectic PCA, a little, okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm glad that.
do you have,
Yeah, I don't know.
the,
I heard great things.
Yeah. It's definitely one, I guess, moderate size, probably, but.
Okay.
you have, everybody got the preliminary exam, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. What about then the topics, recommended presentation topics? Got that?
Aren't they the same as a preliminary exam?
No,
Oh,
No, we don't have, I thought they were the same. I thought we were just supposed to pick one.
no, topics, pick one, but okay. What about, do you have a document that begins, or do you have a 2-page outline of the class, of the course?
Yeah, that goes into assignments.
After the assignments, should be a 2-page outline, beginning with course outline, introduction, what is ethics?
All right.
No,
That.
we don't have that.
What about the beginning of what I would say the class itself, ethics, very top of it, bold print. You never have the right to do wrong. You don't have that?
No.
We just have the syllabus and the pretest.
Okay,
Mr. Wortman might be able to help too if these were posted and populate to previous class times. I know sometimes he's got the documents.
well, what I've usually done is just pass around the flash drive. And, it quickly goes around the class and then everybody has it.
yeah, I think I've got it. I'm trying to upload.
Where did the flash drive go?
He's got it.
Oh, okay. You got
It
it.
sounds like he's gonna be able to get it uploaded.
You gonna put it on Populi or Drive?
I will put it on Populi under the discussions.
Lenny said she would also stop by in a minute too. Let's make sure.
What do we do without an IT help?
Read books.
As far as I can be. Hey,
Hey, I just wanted to see which ones you did to send. So this is the one I got from you. And you did mention references to these other two outlines,
yeah.
but this was the file that I got.
Okay. What, can you open that?
Okay, so now I have, so the,
That's part of sanctification.
Yeah, and this is a really big folder, so I wasn't sure if it was all embedded in here.
No.
Okay,
So that's the beginning of what you have on sanctification?
yeah, this is the whole Google Drive is this
Okay,
document.
Okay. Well, you're missing the first 13 pages of that.
Oh,
I don't know.
so Tim was able to upload the one you said that has ethics at the top
Uh-huh.
and then course purpose. Yeah, the word ethics is derived from the Greek.
Yes. I believe that's.
You got that, you say?
Yeah, so that gives,
did you find that in the syllabus?
it's on his
Yeah, I put down,
flash drive.
I have flash drive with mine too, so-
uploaded a file,
Probably
history of
the easiest thing to
philosophy.
Okay, so since Tim's uploaded, I'll take a look at that and then save that for future
do. Okay,
courses, so that works.
thank you,
It has a
Lane.
crisis been averted.
Sanctification is what you uploaded, correct, Laney?
Correct, yeah, sanctification outline PDF.
So it was history of philosophy, Mr. Elkin, sanctification, and then the ethics
Ethics, yes.
syllabus.
And
Edit.
but what she has is sanctification on again begins with page 14. I don't have any idea why that happened.
That's really weird.
It's a PDF file.
Let me look, what you getting down.
I wonder if there's an issue with that Google Drive link that I got.
This is syllabus, correct?
That's history of philosophy.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I've got that.
How many
put up.
pages? You're gonna show about 90 pages of that.
Yeah, page 1 of 100.
Yeah, 114 or something. Yeah.
Yep,
Okay,
okay,
so you
so-
have the history of philosophy.
Yes, so I've got that. Ethics syllabus,
Okay,
Standards.
that's the beginning of the ethics. You have,
but that's just 2 pages.
oh,
Ethics original, is this
okay. Yeah, more
50
pages than-
51 pages on this
Yeah,
one?
okay, you've got ethics.
Okay, I'll upload that one, and then you uploaded sanctification.
Yes.
So we,
But
But it
it
doesn't
only
But that
begins with
one's-
page
one.
14.
yeah, that's
Maybe redo the sanctification one if it's jumbled.
an outline.
Yeah, let's see
Let me
what
jump
Tim
on, I'll
has.
delete the one I uploaded so you can do the other one.
Didn't want to do that.
Psalm 19:14.
Okay, so those, where's it, John? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
this
where it
one also
begins.
starts on page 14.
That's weird. I bet this OneDrive file's gotta be corrupted or something's
Well,
gotta be wrong with that.
So what's the easiest thing? To ask you to scan the whole?
Well, if Tim can upload it to
Oh.
the files on Populi, which I believe you can.
So he's got 2 that he can. But the sanctification can't because it only begins with 14 like what you have.
Oh,
Wait,
This
what
is halfway into the file. We've got this.
Oh, that's a different class.
Oh, all right. This is the rest of sanctification.
Psalm 19:14, no cap,
So yeah, I think we're missing. the
and no
first-
space.
First 13 pages.
Yes, sir.
So would it be easier to scan the whole batch and then it's in one file rather than trying to patch it into this?
Probably.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Can we do that? Okay. Okay, Tim, could you be sending those?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, so I see the history of philosophy and then that 2-page ethics.
Syllabus, and so we need the ethics
Okay, let's see.
outlines.
I think, Lanny, what I'm gonna ask is
Mhm.
that you just do this whole thing. Is that
I
okay?
can,
Can
yep,
you do
I can
that?
scan everything that's in the spiral.
Can it go through the scan with these on it or
I
not?
believe so. Yeah, I'll put them in with this side, so it should be fine.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
Yep,
Thank
I'll
you.
get that scanned for you.
Okay, sorry, guys. But also on top of everything, I even have a student, IT guy. I thought he verified it all for me. But I usually just bring the flash drive. Okay, so let me try to regain my composure here.
How many files got uploaded? Tim, just the one or? the ethics
I've
one?
uploaded 3 files, just the syllabus is the first one, history of philosophy is the second one, and I've just uploaded the ethics outline. They're all under the same discussions page.
Yeah, I just see the one file, I think.
There's the one document, but if you go to the rest of the thing, you can download the files.
You may have to refresh.
Yeah.
I had to refresh it.
It's all under the same discussion as well, so you just have to scroll down.
I'm seeing the ethics. How many pages is the ethics one supposed to be?
The outlines,
Yeah,
1 page.
okay.
All right, yeah, I just had to scroll down.
Okay, and you guys all have them?
So we have everything but sanctification.
But we had.
She's
that one,
removing
yeah.
sanctification.
Oh, okay, yeah,
She's scanning it, can send it to us, or whatever. And
Which one are we starting with today?
we're ethics is the whole thing, but I'm making some
Okay.
references. And what I'm actually going to do and intend to do is to deal with the syllabus, et cetera, and ethics. Jump to some topics in history of philosophy. And I'll just tell you my whole plan right now. My plan is to say that philosophy is dealing with reality, rationalism, empiricism, revelation, and very quickly do an overview of some of the history of ideas in the history of philosophy. It's something I've taught before. And then sanctification becomes an issue under that topic, and sanctification has as a set subtopic ethics. So I'm trying to build through the history of ideas 1 into sanctification 2 to get to ethics. And I've got a quote of J.I. Packer. Thank you. Got a quote of, hey, Tim, when she gets that done, maybe I can ask you to put that, whenever she scans, put that on this flash drive for me too.
Yes, sir, I can do that.
I've got a quote of J.I. Packer that sanctification is built on, it's like a bridge on 2 pillars. One is ethics and the other is Christian living, meaning real spirituality. And so, you know, my thesis is that we're really talking about sanctification as a general topic. And we're talking about the way in the history of ideas, people have had to try to come to terms with how do we see ourselves and how do we see around us. And the pendulum swings between supposed rationalism, naturalism, and into empiricism. And so we're acknowledging that revelation informs reason and experience. That I just told you my story.
All right.
Mr. Alcorn, I get you to stand up real quick so that the camera focuses in on you. We messed it up.
So,
The camera needs motion to look onto you. It's,
oh, my motion. I thought you were saying the camera needed motion.
oh, no.
Hey, you got me back the way I was.
It's not, oh, it's starting to zoom in a little more.
There we go.
Now we got
There
you.
we go.
Sorry about that.
Thank you. Thank you. So that was my package. And of course, then ethics becomes the brunt. But I was wanting to paint the backdrop. And so let's look at we have the ethics syllabus, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Course description. The word ethics is derived from the Greek, actually. It means custom or usage, and sometimes custom or practice as prescribed by law. In terms of this concept, ethics would refer to the manner of life, to the pattern of conduct, or in a word, to conduct. If ethics is concerned with manner of life and behavior, biblical ethics is concerned with the manner of life or behavior which the Bible requires and which the faith of the Bible produces. Out of Murray. So we're talking about how we're supposed to live. What's it supposed to look like? What is the standard, etc. In this course, we will come to terms with the oughtness of life's issues. And someone challenged me on the word oughtness being an English word or not. I don't care. The oughtness, what ought we to be doing? The source of that oughtness, the consequences, and the apparatus for applying such oughtness in practical areas of action, both privately and publicly. So ought is the word that is driving ethical discussions. Objectives, assignments, read Holmes' book, Ethics, chapters 1 and 6, read 1 and then read chapter 6. In chapter 6, he elucidates 4 ingredients in evaluating an ethical theory. Apply these 4 ingredients to chapters 2, 3, 4, and 5. Right? No more than 1 page on each chapter. Then apply the ingredients to chapter 11. I'll tell you what I'm saying. Okay, Holmes is one of the big broader evangelical authorities in the discussion of ethics. He prescribes these ingredients that are necessary to be considered and then violates his own standards. I just told you the secret of what I'm trying to demonstrate out of Holmes. He does as all do, who in not allowing revelation to inform reason, he violates his own standards. Okay, that's the way you deal with Holmes, chapters 1 and 6, and then apply his 4 ingredients to chapters 2 through 5. Right, no more than 1 page on each chapter. Okay, that's not too big of an assignment because there are a bunch of chapters. 15%, marriage and divorce would be one of the most prevalent ethical problems faced by the Lord's church today. We should therefore clarify our position on this question. Read Adam's Marriage, Divorce, and Remarriage, plus, of course, Murray's The Marriage Ordinance and Procreation and Principles of Conduct. You should also check the Westminster Standards and Murray's Divorce. No need to write more than 5 pages. Write 5 pages of your conclusion on that study of marriage and divorce. Then, are you done?
Yep, it's uploaded now. You should be able to see it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Lanny.
No problem.
Sorry about that, and maybe we're back in business now. Does everybody understand? And let me just say, you think I'm a 15% particulars kind of guy? No. But I'm telling you that in my estimation, spend some of your time on Holmes and see what mishmash you get out of that. Number 2, no more than 5 pages on this discussion of marriage, divorce, and remarriage. I've got another rather exhaustive document to hand you probably on Wednesday. It may be Wednesday when we get to that. But the divorce question is rampant, of course. May I tell you, yes, I may. Can I tell you, yes, I will, that in teaching this class different years through the decades, 2 decades, 2.5, whatever, I find it to be quite startling that students at the most conservative seminary and most conservative denominations in most conservative part of the world and most conservative and most in keep on going. We have radical differences in a class when it comes to the question of divorce. Not much radical difference when it comes to the question of remarriage. But from year to year, I get responses like this, and we're going to do some work on divorce because it's the biggie. It's what you will face a lot. My brother, the clinical psychologist, retired teaching elder, PCA. Most of what he did through the decades was marital problems. People usually go to the pastor wanting verification for their own position. It's usually late in the discussion when they seek pastoral counsel with marital problems. You need to be as sharp as possible on this question when you begin to hit it. In class, one year, the students did say that adultery only occurred when there was, let me be, since we don't have a woman here, I can just be a little bit more coarse in the language, sexual penetration. Oh. One year, the students concluded that if a man touched a woman's hand who wasn't his wife, there could be justification for adultery, mental adultery having occurred. Oh, that's a pretty wide spectrum between touching a person's hand and sexual penetration.
Like accidentally on the subway touching her hand, or like intentionally going on a walk holding her hand?
Well, not accidentally bumping into the hand, but touching the hand. In discussions about pornography, from seeing a picture to addiction to pornography. The views at the most conservative seminary have swung radically from one end to the other. And I want you guys to debate yourself to some degree on this. So you better handle some of the issues. So that's a big one right there, number 2. Number 3, write a 5-page critique of Humanist Manifestos 1 and 2. You've got that, everybody has it. Okay, note the different published dates of 1 and number 2, incidentally, and see the agenda that we've been facing from the Humanist Manifesto crowd all along. Number 4 is a pre-exam, and we'll obviously not get to that until after lunch sometime. Here is the theory behind the pre-exam. Bebo, I've never had a class that does this kind of thing. Okay, well, here was the intent. To send out to you a specified list of questions, which upon being answered would give us a head start on what some of the discussion must be surrounding ethics. Dr. Piper and I had a class in college in which, as an example, it was a church history class, 2 semesters. We had to read Renwick's book, History of the Church, paperback, 180 pages or so, and have an exam on that book a month into the class. Why? Because the book itself gave that panorama of the discussion of the history of the church. Then a lot of the data could be more easily filled in. It is the question of the forest of the trees. Take a view at some of the forest and then begin looking more particularly at some of the trees. That exam was designed to get you to think about a lot of the questions, or not a lot, some of the questions, so that we would be a bit more up to speed when we get to this point, first day. And are you going to pass or fail on the basis? No, but I had hoped that you would do some homework. In a master's program in philosophy, the written exams, there were two portions to the written exam. The first Saturday the 6 of us or 8 of us, whatever it was, I can't remember. We all had been given the questions that were going to be asked in part A of the written exams of the master's for the master's degree. We divided the questions up, we got together and we taught each other the answers basically. So we divided up the homework. I was hoping that you with advance notice could get a little bit of that homework shared among you. That was my goal. It obviously does not work out too well usually, and it didn't work out too well this time either, but that was the design. The second portion, portion B, we did not know what the questions were going to be. And they came scattered through the department from the different professors. I'll tell you that there were 6 major questions. Now, I did fine on the first part, A, passed the second part, but I knew 2 of the 6. I thought I had a fair guess on 2 more. 2, I was winging it. But you see what they were doing from the different professors tossing in the questions for the written examination. And then there was an oral examination by members of your committee. That was pretty wide open also. But the design of these questions on the preliminary exam is to get you to do some Wikipedia quick survey of some of the questions that we need to be having in mind. That's number 4. Number 5, and change one night, or I'm ambivalent on this. Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, and all work is going to be sent to me by email. And I don't look at it. I create a major pile of all of your stuff. And when the time comes, I make myself sit down and read all of it. Look, I'm not putting you down, okay? I'm putting us down. All the stuff I seem to have written in the past was not always very good. And, but what I do is I read them in comparison to each other. Oh, Bebo, we're not trying to be competitive. I want to know what you're getting, what you're understanding. I'm asking you, among other things, to write a 1-page response to the day. Okay? I don't care what you write. I've always done this with every class I've ever taught. Getting a 1-page response. I would get some like, Bebo, I couldn't pay attention in class today because my wife and I had a fight before I walked out this morning. Oh, okay. I'm not asking you to compliment me, nor am I asking you to critique me. I don't really need that. I want to see what is bubbling up in your mind resulting from the day's discussions. Method. I was always recruiting. I have a 1976 Datsun 280Z in my driveway with 550,000 miles on it. It was the RUF car. Get a seminary student in and ride to Ole Miss, spend the day, take the campus minister and wife to dinner, go to a core group meeting, go to large group, leave at 9:30, driving 2 hours, 2.5 hours back to Jackson. 30 minutes, I would ask 1,000 questions going up, ask a lot of questions, come back. What did you learn? What did you hear? What do you think? We'd get 30 minutes away from Jackson, and I would ask this question. I would say it this way. When you walk in the house, your wife's going to want to know what your day was like, and you're going to say it was fine. At which point she'll kick you in the shin. She wants to know some of what bubbled to the surface. and I would make the guy give me the 3 major things that hit the top of his mind from the day. I'm recruiting, I'm trying to get him to become an analyst. What are the strengths and weaknesses that you detected? What are you learning? I want the 1-day response to be, what bubbled to the top of your mind today? I'm not interested in you telling me the email glitch was not very successful. It didn't help very much. I think I'm getting that. But I want you to give a 1-page reaction. What is happening in your mind today? And at the end of the week, I will ask you for no more than a 5-page reaction on the week. I don't want to read it. But I create a pile of all of these papers, and I read the comparative papers and assign a general value to them. Right? Right. If you don't do the work, there's the problem. Here's my philosophy. Seminary students had better be doing their work. A seminary student had better not get a C in my class. You got it? I'm not here to create a grading curve. I'm not here to put you in some comparative analysis with your peers. I'm here as your servant to do my best to rub your nose where it needs to be rubbed. I want you to feel more like it is a graduate seminar than a sophomore history class. Got it? Got it. So I want no more than 5 pages at the end of the week, a response on the week. Bebo, when do all this work have to be in? Well, I don't know. In the past, it's been the last day of the exam period at the end of the semester. So all of a sudden I start getting excuses 2 days before the end of the exam period. Bebo, my wife had triplets and so we're a little bit busy right now. Bebo, because of a car wreck. Don't do that. You will not be any fresher the later you wait than you are the day after the class. Be self-disciplined and be an adult and do your work quickly and get this class behind you. I don't mean to be speaking directly to some of what information we just heard because some of it is really beyond your control. I understand it. I get it. But I run into seminary students who say, well, Bebo, I'm graduating in May and I may take my licensure exam in November or the next spring sometime. My response is, every day you wait, you lose a little bit of information. Take the exam ASAP. Do the written work. Force yourself to be disciplined to do the written work and get it done and get it behind you. Incidentally, I was licensed in PCA Presbyterian, Grace Presbyterian in 1976. I was relicensed in 2012. Do you think I knew everything in 2012 that I had fresh on the top of the brain in 1976? No. Do you think I had to prepare in 76 from my graduation in 71? Yes. Okay, the point is all too obvious. If I were you, I would spend Saturday, this coming Saturday, doing a lot of this stuff where I'm trying to rub your nose into things. Get it done so you don't push things off later in the next semester and create chaos in your home? Will you be adult in your self-discipline? I've said many times to seminary students, seminary is not that hard. Everybody expects you to make A's and B's. It's not that hard. It's that busy. And here I am pointing a finger, you know, back at myself. I think sometimes seminary professors are giving work just for the seeming sake of giving work. I hope that's not what I'm doing, but because I revolt against that attitude. The harder I am on you, the more you think of the class that I had for you. No. I'm doing my best. I've got a point. I'll go ahead and tell you, I'm an ethical absolutist. Not a graded absolutist, not any other variety, an absolutist. And yes, you're going to want to tangle with me on the sanctity of truth. That's going to be the point where the discussion always falls into the traps. But I am trying to rub you into things, forcing you to think through toward a direction. Do your work and get it done ASAP when the class is over. I know you're busy. 1 or 2 times this class has come in the midst of the normal schedule of classwork. Imagine that. I would have 3 or 4 hours in an afternoon and 2 hours in the morning, and the poor students were just going crazy. It's bad enough as it is. You're going to be busy every night this week. Please get it done and send all of the stuff to me that you know that I want of your work by email. Are there any questions about that? Am I clear enough?
So you want a daily report
Yes.
and a week report.
Yes.
So there's 2 different types of report.
Yes. Yes.
And the Calvin summary.
Yes. Send me the Calvin summaries. And when we have presentations, let's make them rather brief.
That's something I don't think we've gotten still. Did we get that, the presentation topics?
Yes.
They're on the preliminary exam.
No.
They are on the file GPTS Ethics Original, underneath the preliminary exam, page 4.
Yeah, page 4.
Yep. Suggested presentation topics: insurance, contraception, gambling, et cetera, et cetera.
Did that one more time on the which file?
GPT
Good, yeah, GPTS ethics.
Ethics Original. File name.
And Mr. Elkin,
Yes.
the original syllabus that was posted said that the questions were going to be on the preliminary exam questions. The presentation was going to be on the preliminary exam, and I'd emailed you asking if I could do my presentation on the
Yes.
content review. Am I still good to keep that, or do I have to go grab one of these? Because I've already done the
I've
work.
got yours right here, Stuart.
Okay, then I'm not going to worry about it. Thank
Early
you.
bird,
gone now.
early bird got the worm.
It's still on the Ethics Original file.
And let's, it's difficult online, and we're going to do our best. Presentations are going to be something like 15 minutes. Okay, 2/3 of a sermon. And you can throw a wild card at me with an idea, and I'll probably say yes. And I want you to prepare either an outline or a manuscript. I don't care which. I've got some that I've preserved from guys having done them in the past because I thought they were exceptional. Your peers may want your good work on the topic that you choose, and you'll pull it out of your file one day because you're facing a question and want to think back through how to handle it. So not just scratch notes, but either an outline or a manuscript, whatever you want to do, what you would want someone to give you on a topic of interest that you might want in your file. That's the way I want it done. A class presentation will be given on one of the topics listed. choose a topic, as long as we don't do the same one. I'm pretty, very flexible on that. A take-home exam. Well, what about how do you proctor a take-home exam? Look, how old are you?
28.
If I have to proctor you, I'm just gonna go ahead and shoot you now. Is that okay? I weary of, I shouldn't say it, should I? But I weary of the discussion about proctoring an exam, take-home exam in seminary. Don't cheat. And I'm not trying to flunk you anyway. Everybody's going to make an A or a B. You're going to graduate. Okay?
Mr. Alsher?
Yes.
Just a quick question, because of the nature, I had emailed you about the surgery my wife is having, and I'm going to be doing some of this by recording.
Yes.
Presentation wise, do you know when those will take place so that I can try and make arrangements to be in class?
Oh, thank you very much, Kurt. Thursday afternoon or Friday, depending on how we get there. And
Okay.
Don't tell anybody this, but if we don't get there, if we don't get everyone to give a presentation, you'll just distribute the presentations to your peers. That is, if we don't have the 12 or 14 slots, whatever it is, enough time to do them, we're just going to do the best we can.
Okay.
Thursday afternoon, Friday would be the earliest. And I will say right now that probably on Friday, we're going to meet from about 9 till 2. And you'll have assignments and you're going to feel like you've got plenty to do on Friday afternoon. But I'm going to walk out at about 2 o'clock because I've got an 8-hour drive, just so you can plan your schedules that way. Understandable? I've got a wife with a health situation too, Kirk. And she's at a daughter's house right now. And so I hope to get home late on Friday night. Let's see, take-home exam. How did I get the exam, Bebo? You email me and ask me for it. And I send it back to you in an email. You take the exam, you send it back to me by email, and it goes in the pile. We'll find out when the last day of papers and exam and all that have to be in. The last year or two, it has been moved up to sometime like late January or sometime in February. I don't make that decision. I just follow orders, but somebody will need to get to ask when should all of the exam and all that stuff be in for this class.
We just take the exam next week.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
We're the boss. We can take
You're the
it
boss,
whenever we
yeah.
want.
Yes, sir, boss. Yes, sir, boss. Shaking in them, boss.
Oh, wait, like as you like, I'm just gonna lose it all if I wait longer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I take it. And again, I'll say it on Friday. My intent with an examination is not to stump you. My intent is to ask you, have you really gotten some of this and how do you respond to it? We begged for a fill in the blank exam one time for Dr. Smith. You're talking about being a terrible exam. I became constitutionally opposed to fill in the blank exams. Short essays, probably 3 short essays and 1 long essay is about what I do on an examination.
Will the exam be covering this week's material or the extent of the class material? Should we, in that case, wait till we've done all the reading and done all the work before we take the exam, or?
I'll have to see how I craft it, and ask me that question, please, on Friday.
Okay.
I don't mean to be evasive, But I'm wanting to say it's going to be on the class and not all the reading. That's what I'm wanting to say, but I'll give you a direct answer on that on Friday. Okay. Here's some resources, recommended texts, Davis, Evangelical Ethics, Duma, Responsible Conduct. And then we turn, how are we doing on time? Oh, 4 minutes, 6 minutes till 12. So we are looking at the first page of, well, let's look at the preliminary exam for just a minute or two, and then we'll break up for lunch. What is the discipline called ethics? What are some ethical motives? Where do we turn for the material of ethics? What is the role of experience, the role of society, etc.? What is the difference ethically between relativism and absolutism? What is meant by unqualified absolutism? Explain John Murray's point about the sanctity of truth. What is the ethical philosophical system called humanism? What is the ethical system called utilitarianism? What is meant by graded absolutism? What does the larger catechism say about telling the truth? 145, 144, and 145, incidentally. In the Westminster Confession of Good Works, what are the several qualifiers of good by which good works are determined? By what authority would anyone have the right to do wrong? What is theonomy? And does it have strengths and weaknesses? What are some? What is the conscience and what role does it play in the discussion of ethics? What is the meaning of the continental view of the Sabbath? Why do we assert that the Old Testament civil law has been abrogated? Does that, well, I'm not going to put the question to you because you're not answering me really. But some of that obviously are going to be some of the topics that we have to encounter. And then I had the suggested presentation topics. And I've had some really very interesting ones that students have suggested that I would not have thought about. Sex change back after conversion. What about that? Cloning, what about that? Tattoos, cremation. About 1/3 of the funerals these days are cremations. It is predicted that within 10 years, that number is going to grow to 2/3. What do you do when you have a family of the church who wants to have the body cremated? How do you handle it? It's going to become a much bigger topic for discussion now so than in the past, of course. But what will you do when 2/3 of the population want cremation? And why do they want cremation? What's the answer to the question?
It's cheap. It's cheaper.
It's cheaper. It's absolutely cheaper. Can I tell you about a family burial that cost $24,000? And it was not extravagant. And can I tell you what a cremation would cost?
3,000.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah. What about fraternities and sororities? Gun control by the government. Where does pastoral confidentiality end? I'm on Presbyterian's shepherding and advisory committee. I'm new back on that committee. I've been on it, I've chaired it, etc. There has been a very radical shift in the way people out there perceive accusations about improprieties. You and I were brought up being told that you're innocent until you're proven guilty. Frankly, you're guilty until proven innocent, depending on the accusation today. You believe me? I'm going to take about 4 minutes to give you a little event. And it may be that one way I can be helpful in class is to note some of these historical things that have occurred. Okay. 3 years ago in May the 9th, to be particular, I received a phone call from a friend, former campus minister, whom I've known since he was in junior high, saying that the RUF Permanent Committee wanted charges to be brought against me by the session of First Presbyterian Church. Does that sound a bit dramatic to you? It got my attention. The person was speaking on behalf of the RUF Permanent Committee, the General Assembly Committee of the Presbyterian Church in America, called the RUF Committee. Hence, the RUF Committee had been talking about me. Since I'm a ruling elder, member of the church, retired, but never a TE, the court of jurisdiction is what? The session. I was told that they wouldn't tell me what the charge was. My temperature went up pretty quickly. Permanent Committee of the PCA wants a session to bring, my session to bring disciplining charges against me. And you won't tell me what it is. Incidentally, I said, how does Matthew 18 fit into this? I did not sleep for a month. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but you're understanding that I did not sleep well at all. My life was at stake. Well, it's one thing for people, not to like you and all that. It's another thing to be accused in an ecclesiastical court of gross impropriety. After about a month, I began to get some trickle down information. What's going on here? They wouldn't tell me. Finally, I started getting some hints. A PCA minister was being accused by a grown daughter in her mid-30s of sexual impropriety when she was younger and lived at home. And ostensibly, when that daughter told her campus minister, RUF, and the campus minister referenced me, ostensibly, I said, oh, don't do anything about it, or something to that effect. All these years later, the daughter, because of memory recovery therapy from an assistant pastor's wife who had had a class in another seminary on memory recovery therapy. This girl, college student, is being told, well, Bevo said, don't do anything about it. I'm eliminating some details here. At one point, I asked the RUF coordinator, halfway through this process, what he was going to do with the committee's documentation or whatever, in-print stuff about this going on. He said he had no idea. my name was out there. You know, a committee of 25 people, the coordinators, all RUF coordinators are involved in committee meetings. The committee at First Pres refused to put the issue before the session. We have a 65-man session. The shepherding committee of the session refused to have the matter go to the session. That was good. 90 days from May the 9th to August the 9th. On August the 9th, I got a letter of apology from the RUF committee. I made several copies. I had them laminated. I'll give you one if you want it. It was almost what I would have asked for. Almost, not quite. But accusation equals condemnation. There was the effort to get the presbytery to deal with the pastor who was accused by the 30-something-year-old daughter, resulting from memory recovery. Accusation today equals condemnation. And you had better get yourself really ready to be self-protecting in the sense of not letting yourself fall into a position where an accusation can be leveled against you. There are just so fundamentally simple things like don't close the office door unless, of course, there's a big window in it. Do not find yourself going to a woman's home to be counseling with her at her home. Just very fundamental things that are just no-brainers. But in particular today, because accusation equals condemnation, no longer are you innocent until proven guilty. You're guilty until proven innocent. And then even if it's the proof of innocence, there are people who are going to shake their heads and say, well, I know that where there's smoke, there's fire. You are about to move into territory that really is, can be very difficult and can be threatening. Major discussion, for example, and we're going to break in a minute, I promise. Another example, the General Assembly of the PCA meeting in Mobile, what year was it? 4 years ago, whatever year it was, encountered the question, does the ecclesiastical court wait until the civil court acts? Or is the ecclesiastical court being prejudicial when it deals with, for example, an adultery, divorce, whatever situation, in reference to the civil court? So should we wait until the civil professionals have dealt with the issue, or must the ecclesiastical court handle her own business, its own business? You will, I didn't photocopy it. There was a document I meant to bring with me. Pastoral ethics in the light of the civil authorities have changed, meaning that whole definition of the word confidentiality has been morphed. And not only in a school position, Kirk, a school position, and I've been that position, headmaster of a Christian school, etc. Not only in the school position must the school authorities report, but that line, that pastoral confidentiality line has been blurred a good bit too. And I had a document that I meant to have photocopied and brought to you, and I think I left it on my desk. You probably need some good references outside who will allow you to bounce some of the discussions off. And if possible, you need a lawyer whom you can ask questions about civil litigation. To be accused is to be condemned. And people don't go into divorce situations because they like each other so much. There's usually a pretty big fight that's going on. And when you and the session, you leading the session declare, for example, that there's not a biblical justification for this divorce to occur, you're likely going to have both parties fighting with you. And you may have them bring litigation against the church. You better be very careful about the ice on which you're walking. You understand? Everybody get it? Is everybody getting it?
Mr. Elkins,
Yes,
may I ask a question regarding that?
yes, please.
So one of the sort of cardinal rules in school administration with the protection, the type of protection you're talking about, or carefulness you're talking about, is appropriate documentation. And as you've already mentioned, other witnesses to events. But oftentimes documentation can be sort of a two-edged sword, in
Yes.
that if it is not done well, misunderstandings can also be documented. So do you have any thoughts regarding what to document and how, and a method that is sort of best advised?
It's only advice, Kirk, and there's not a rule book. The Book of Church Order doesn't give rules on this. And I'm suggesting that it's a moving target. What we should have documented 50 years ago was nothing. It was nothing. The church was trusted and the pastor was trusted. And what was the percentage rate of divorce 50 years ago, 80 years ago, that kind of thing, in comparison to today? And divorce is your thing. That's the thing that's going to hit you. And you may find, I'm wandering off course here, Kurt. My thesis is it's a moving target and only an opinion. I'm going to come back to it, and I think in 1 minute. But we as a Presbyterian faced a situation. I was chairman of the shepherding committee. A session involved in a discussion about an imminent divorce or desired divorce ruled in one way. Okay. The complaint was lodged against the session